How's it going, people? Sam and Slappy here, and yesterday was the RuneFest livestream. I'm not sure how many of you have seen it, but I figured I'd cover all the small things and kind of like the major points of it, so you don't have to watch a 9-hour stream, and I'll give you all the information you need. Well, hopefully that's the plan anyway. So first things off the bat, I've mentioned this a few times in some videos. Some of you may have noticed it, some of you haven't. I was going to cover it, but because it wasn't guaranteed information, I didn't really want to put it out there. But in a nutshell, RuneScape is getting a new client. Now you may be thinking, well, what's the point in that? Well, you know how HTML5 came out and they tried to extend like draw distance as well as add proper shadows, some decent shaders, and all the other stuff that goes along with it, like completely revamping the graphics of RS. Well, the problem with HTML5 is basically they got to like a dead point where they couldn't really improve it anymore for the most part. So that is what this new client is about, and as far as I'm aware, it is made with C++, which kind of works across the board, and it's an easier kind of code to sort out. I'm not going to go into details, but in a nutshell, it's going to run a bollock ton smoother than Java, like an immense amount smoother. On top of that, it does give them the functionality of being able to add the better shaders as well as nicer graphics, and overall it's going to be a hell of a lot better than the Java client. They're still going to have the Java client in the browser, and you're going to have this one as a downloadable client, I dare say, just like we have now, except for it'll be using a different method. It won't be using Java, it'll be like C++ to access it, something along those lines. On top of that, they did mention that it will be going on Mac as well as Windows as well as Linux, and it will have full support. So if you're using Linux or you're using Mac, you will now actually have proper support for it. More so Linux than anything else, because in order to play RuneScape on Linux you had to kind of like download a third-party program in a way. But yeah, all in all, it's pretty good. He did also mention that it's going to tie in to the HTML5 engine / part of it. I'm not sure what he entirely meant by that, but somehow or another the HTML5 will be utilised by it as well. So there we go, that's the new RuneScape client. So next thing on the list is something they called Rune Labs. Well, in a nutshell, you know you got the suggestion part in the official RuneScape forums where you just chuck down what you think would be good additions to the game. Well, that's what Rune Labs is going to be, except for it's kind of more official, if you will. They'll put guidelines and stuff in the actual forum itself to kind of say, like, right, you need at least like minimum this information for your suggestion, or kind of other things to go along with it, like the base you need for your suggestion when you put it in there. And yeah, in a nutshell, how it is right now, Jagex come up with a few ideas, and then they put it in the player poll, right? That's how it works right now, and then we decide which one's going up. But it's all coming from like Jagex. So with the Rune Labs, the idea is they're going to try and remodel it, so it's something along the lines of they'll look through all of the Rune Labs, pick out the best ones of the lot, and then look at which ones are feasible to actually create, and then put those ones into a poll. And occasionally they'll still have like the official Jagex Onry updates. So you'll still be getting stuff from them, like fixes and kind of necessities to the game. At the same time, stuff will be coming out of Rune Labs, which is basically from us, so it's suggested by us, and it should hopefully be a bit better. So the next thing on the list is the 200th quest. They went into this a little bit. In a nutshell, I should probably stop saying that, but basically, the 200th quest is going to be fairly big-ish. He did say that he's not going to make it the hardest and longest quest ever, or that wasn't the plan at least. But the 200th quest is kind of going to be based on an alternate reality. All the other quests in the game, imagine if you wasn't there to complete them and time still went on. So for example, Zamorgul would plan an attack on Varrock, he'll conquer Varrock, and now he's in charge of Varrock. Delrith goes on a bit of a rampage and makes his own little despot area. And it's the same thing with pretty much every single other quest if you wasn't there to kind of fix it and solve everybody's problems. That's the basis of the 200th quest. And I dare say the rewards from it are probably going to be pretty good. as they were mentioning the fact that you got like barrows from Recipe of Disaster when that came out, the 100th one, and that was like a pretty awesome upgrade to gear at the time. So yeah, should be looking into that. For the Christmas thing, they're going to go a bit mental and have like a gigantic world event sized cracker, and it'll be player versus player to try and pull the cracker and open it. A bunch of other stuff as well, like being able to ski / snowboard in RuneScape and pull off tricks and stuff. So yeah, that's all coming along. The next thing on the list is the pop expansion. They didn't go into a lot of detail with the pop expansion because they haven't really decided on anything as such, but player and ports will likely get a melee and mage weapon upgrade, and the skills to be kind of associated with them is apparently agility and dungeoneering. There was a third one, but I can't remember what he did actually say. But yeah, they're looking into maybe adding the melee and mage weapons to pop, as well as adding more to the eastern lands and that kind of thing. So yeah. For those of you interested in PvP, they are still looking into PvP. They did add legacy mode to try and help out a little bit, but even they themselves said that, well, right now PvP is a bit of a mess. And they will be looking into, like, fully updating the wilderness with some extra stuff to kind of bring PvP back. They're still, before they do any of that though, looking at the actual triangle, how to make PvP a bit more interesting. Fair would be a better word, I guess. But they are looking into sorting out the PvP, and they'll then, once everything is kind of like evened out and it's fun to play and lots of people are doing it, that kind of thing, they'll go into the wilderness and start making like mini games, so like hunting games and things like that. So you can have a decent time in the wildy, and it'll bring back some information there. On top of that, there was mentioning roaming bosses in the wilderness as well. I just thought I'd add that in there because I found it pretty interesting. So it's kind of like the Chaos Elemental at the top, I guess, because that's a roaming boss. I was thinking of a different word there. But yeah, that's the only roaming boss in the wildy I can think of. So yeah, should be pretty interesting either way. So yeah, actually is probably the most interesting one of the lot. For me personally, it's the one I found the most interesting besides the new RuneScape client coming out, although I kind of already knew about it. And this is the Inventor skill. Now, last year in RuneFest they mentioned the Inventor skill, and for those of you who don't remember, it kind of amalgamates a load of skills together with Inventor. And by using Inventor you could combine weapons and stuff to create more powerful weapons or special weapons. You could create something called a soul weapon, which will level up with you, and it was all this kind of stuff coming along with Inventor. But Mod Mark, in his little presentation, well, he hit on a pretty good point, I'm not gonna lie. Instead of adding Inventor, well, it's not guaranteed, I'll just say this now, it's going to be put into a poll, and it'll be entirely up to us which one we decide to use. But the choices will be like, have the Inventor skill, alright? So straight away you just get the Inventor skill. Two things to mention, making skills takes a lot longer than the alternative, which I'll go into now. The alternative to having the Inventor skill, and this is the part which I kind of prefer personally, is instead of spending all that time adding all these things and then trying to amalgamate them into a separate skill, and just adding a new skill to RuneScape for the sake of adding new skills to RuneScape, instead he would prefer, or ideally would want to modify the skills that are in game right now. So making huge updates to fletching. Examples of this is they could modify fletching to add like recurve bows or repeater crossbows, adding new items and stuff in there that technically you would go with Inventor, but instead of just making a new skill for the sake of it, adding and modifying the existing skills within game right now. That's kind of like what he wants to do. Smithing, for example, he was talking about like adding new gear sets to it, but more along the lines of being able to kind of design your own gear within smithing. So you can design the look of it, and depending on your level, it would obviously modify the stats and that kind of thing. That seems a bit more interesting to me personally, I don't know about you. And then he was talking about construction and stuff as well, because that would be utilised in Event a little bit. Plus, they did talk about this last year where they wanted like an overworldy type construction. And he goes on to mention it again, that they kind of want to look into adding surface world building areas as such. The main reason for this is because player-owned houses is kind of wrapped up in like this enigma of code, and it would take absolutely ages to try and fix it and then remodel it and then add graphics to it to make it actually nice and decent. So they're looking into adding it to service worlds so you can do stuff up there. And with that stuff you could have like communal cooking and that kind of thing. You'd build your own generators, etc, etc. But yeah, he didn't go into massive detail on the inventor skill, but honestly, instead of making a new skill for the sake of it, I'd rather have these things just straight up added to the skills themselves, and that's kind of what he says. Actually making modifications to the skills in-game right now, because I mean, you look at smithing, and it's like, well, congratulations, you have 99 smithing, you can now make a rune plate. Yeah. A rune plate at like max level smithing, I would honestly prefer to be making like Bandos armor, equivalent gear, that kind of thing at 99. I mean, you'd expect that to come out. I mean, once upon a time ago, having rune at 99 was good, but because the game is advanced so far now, it's a bit out of date. So I prefer they modify that rather than make a new skill. On top of that, modifying the skills themselves takes a hell of a lot less time than building up a brand new skill. And that's from Modmark's mouth himself, pretty much. So yeah, that's the inventor situation. So the next one, and this one did look absolutely awesome. I wasn't expecting this at all, but it does look sweet, and I really do hope this comes out pretty soon. This is the new world event. I don't know if many of you have seen it, but wow. Tusker is the new world event. So Tusker is, well, he's a bit of an animal, and he's been in the lore. Well, basically he was the one who helped destroy Guthix's homeland and stuff. If you don't know anything about the lore, there's loads of videos of RS lore I've made on this channel. It's in a giant playlist. Watch through those and you'll understand. But Tusker's coming, and he does look awesome. The design art for Tusker is absolutely cool as poo. So Tusker himself, the way the fight's going to work, all the other world events, it was like one team versus another team, right? That's how it worked. You joined either Sarah or Zami, you killed each other. You joined Armor or Bandos, you killed each other. Right, fair enough. That's how they worked before. So they're changing it up this time. Tusker is going to be everybody's enemy, because Tusker is a bit of a psychopath. He really doesn't think at all. It's basically an animal that just likes fighting and destruction and stuff. So Tusker's going to appear. But Tusker is huge, like monstrously massive, and on his back is going to be like this giant portal. And you enter this portal and it'll be like a dungeon within Tusker. And you'll have all of Tusker's minions and stuff, and you've got to fight through these dungeons, etc, etc, to try and hold Tusker back. At the same time, on the outside, you can try and block Tusker and use skills to try and slow him down, and then straight up force to try and attack Tusker, that kind of thing. It does sound pretty awesome, and it's everybody versus Tusker, so it should be a good laugh, and you won't have to worry about PvP and stuff like that. So yeah, there is that. Now some other things, which were briefly mentioned. There wasn't a huge amount of mega information on this, but you have a new game coming from RuneScape called RuneScape Chronicles. This thing is probably not what you're thinking right now if you didn't see the stream. It's a game from Jagex using all of the RuneScape kind of IPs, like all the characters, the music, the locations, the graphics, that kind of thing. So it's their own property. But they're adding this to a new game which is kind of like, I'd say a standalone, but it also ties into RuneScape at the same time. It's not a new MMO or anything like that. It's kind of like a card game. Think of like Magic the Gathering-ish, or Hearthstone, or anything like that. It's kind of like a weird mix on those, but it's all using the Jagex property kind of stuff. So the idea is, you'll have like generals, or like the main character, and you go through and you'll pick up cards and you use these cards to try and power up your character, and then at the end you fight another character. And this is multiplayer and stuff as well. And along with all of this, I'm not going to go into massive detail because there isn't a huge amount of info, and there are videos and stuff out there where he mentions it. But basically they kind of work together and you fight each other for shits and giggles mostly. But it'll, well, the idea is hopefully they can tie it into the RuneScape game in such a way, like you could be playing RuneScape, for example, and let's say you're stabbing, I don't know, Dark Beast in the eye for shits and giggles, because, you know, Dark Beast deserve it. And randomly, this Dark Beast could drop a special card. And this card you could link to the RS Chronicle game. And basically the idea is, when you go to RS Chronicle, you'd log in with your RuneScape login. So if you've got any items in the actual official Jagex RuneScape online MMO game, and you managed to get a couple of cards in there, or you bought a couple of cards, or you found a couple of cards, or whatever other kind of things they add to RS Chronicle, you could find in game, and then it would instantly transfer over to RS Chronicle for you. And the reason why they're making this game is kind of like a side note, but it was pretty fun to play. And it'll tie in RuneScape, because I mean, if you go out and you're leveling up woodcutting, for example, you're going to be sitting there for a while just probably watching TV or playing another game simultaneously. So the idea behind it is this RS Chronicle can be one of those games you play on the side simultaneously with RuneScape. And at the same time, if you don't have access to a PC to play RuneScape, you can use it. And the reason for it is RS Chronicle is going to be available on PC, Mac, tablets, and mobile phones. So you can just play it on the fly if you want your RuneScape fix, but can't jump into the game. So yeah, that was RS Chronicle. It's a brand new game launch. It's literally in like pre-alpha. It's planned to come out sometime in 2015. But as it is pre-alpha, you never know, they could come into some massive problems or something. So yeah, expect it next year either way. That is what they said. But it looks pretty good. It doesn't look too bad, and there's something to do on the side. And I suppose if it helps out with the official game in one way or another, might be worth having a look into. Now this next bit, for you PVMers, this will sound pretty interesting too. They didn't have a lot of time on the stream to actually cover, or in the sessions in RuneFest to cover a lot of stuff, because there was just so much. But one little snippet of information was they was thinking about making a brand new God Wars dungeon, or a God Wars dungeon-esque dungeon. So it's like this big combat arena with loads of bosses. They was thinking about adding something similar to that. It's like God Wars Dungeon 2.0, if you will. But it'll consist of different monsters and different people and all that kind of stuff. It sounded awesome, although that was literally all that was said because there was no time for it. So that does sound pretty sweet. There was other things as well, such as wanting to modify all the shops across RuneScape. Basically, he just wanted to try and change them somehow, because right now as they are, well, they just barely used. There's only very few shops you would actually use, right? I mean, battle staffs. Yeah, you'd want battle staffs. Other than that, runes possibly. And then it's like bare materials, so you want vials, a thread, some needle, etc, etc. So like bare necessities, that's kind of really all you use the shops for these days. So yeah, he was talking about that too. He did want to talk about more about Iron Man, maybe what he was planning to do in the future, but he had no time for that either. Last thing on the list worth kind of really mentioning is what they're trying or thinking about doing to change minigames. And the reason why I thought this is quite interesting is, I mean, if you look at all the minigames in the game, how many of them do you play? If any. Yeah? I mean, people may want to go down to mobilizing armies and get the Onyx Eye Ring, although that's only a slight boost over the, was it Third Age Circuit, the one you get from World Wakes. So, yeah, for the time involved in getting the Onyx Eye, which is about 24 hours if I remember rightly, for the extra, I think it's like 20 armor and maybe 0.1% crit, it's not really worth it, is it? But on top of that, even if you wanted to do it, you will be struggling to find people who actually are doing mobilizing armies. I mean, the fact is, mobilizing armies has been out for absolutely ages now. And most people who wanted the Onyx Eye already have an Onyx Eye. And the people who are left is like either new players or people who just on a whim is like, oh well, I fancy an Onyx Eye for something to do. You know, pimp up my ring slot a little bit. Maybe. But you go there, and because everyone else has kind of done it, it gets kind of oldish content where most people have done it and they've had what they wanted out of it, and that's it. So you can't really play mobilizing armies unless you somehow get a group together for it. And it's the same thing with all the other mini-games. So it's like Castle Wars and Trouble Brewing, the Barbarian Assault, all this kind of thing. I mean, when people have done it and they've already got all the items from it, it's well, there's not much reason to go back, right? So in order to kind of fix this and bring some life back into the minigames, they want to change how minigames work in kind of general. The games themselves will be exactly the same as they are. They're not going to change, or if they do, it'll be under like a rework, a separate thing altogether. But what they want to change is how you get or earn rewards from minigames. And they mentioned that instead of like mobilizing armies, let's say you get like 200k points in there, well, you can only spend those 200k points inside mobilizing armies, the same as if you went into Soul Wars and you had 100 points, you can only spend 100 points in your Soul Wars. So they want to change it up so every single minigame gives you a standardized minigame reward currency as such. So if you had 100 points in mobilizing armies, you could then go to Soul Wars and spend your 100 points at Soul Wars. Right? If you was in Castle Wars and you had 300 points from Castle Wars, you could go over to Trouble Brewing and buy some stuff in Trouble Brewing with those points you earned elsewhere. On top of this, to kind of add some variance, and to bring some life to less loved minigames or less used, they'll put, I suppose you could call it like a grand prize or a special reward, and they'll attach it to X minigame for X period of time. So, for example, they could add something like Silverhawk Feathers is now a buyable reward within Trouble Brewing for a month. And hopefully that would bring people over to Trouble Brewing, and they'll get points in Trouble Brewing so they can literally spend their points and get themselves some Phoenix Feathers or whatever they are, Silverhawk Feathers. It's that kind of thing. That's kind of like the thinking behind it. So everything's kind of like got standardized currency across the board in a way. And they'll have special rewards only from specific places at certain times in order to kind of bring people back and forth from different places over to these other minigames which may really be played otherwise. So yeah, all in all, that's pretty much the full coverage from the RuneFest, I do believe. Don't think there's anything else I'm missing off the top of my head. But yeah, all in all, kind of the major ones, in my eyes, it might be the same for you, but the major ones coming is Iron Man, which is guaranteed to come out tomorrow, Monday. That's what Mod Mark said, so that's tomorrow, which means, yeah, I am Iron Man will be starting, you know? So that'll be interesting. I'll jump on that tomorrow, good times. But the ones worth mentioning that I really like the sound of is, instead of the inventor skill, it's the modify all the skills in the goddamn game already. The new RuneScape client, it does look pretty. I'm not gonna lie, it does look nice. And it's about time someone jumped off fucking Java, it's shite. And the last one is the world event with Tusker, because that does just sound awesome and Tusker looks sweet. So yeah, there we go. Hopefully I've covered all of the RuneFest stuff nice and easily for you. That's most of the information. Obviously, if you watched the actual stream yourself, you'll understand all of the finer details that were said. But in a nutshell, that covers everything in RuneFest as far as I'm aware. Don't think I've missed out any major things. But yeah, there we go. I suppose, randomly worth mentioning, the vampire quests are a thing. They're still looking at vampire quests. At the same time, they're also looking at doing the dungeoneering quests. So, you know, there was no kind of details there. On top of that, down in the desert, they was talking about getting Menethos open. Because we just had Privinus, and Privinus, yeah, we've wanted for ages, but how long has that desert been there? You know? So they was looking at that, but I mean, none of this is confirmed. It's like, yeah, we'd like to work on it. But there's no actual information for like, alright, well, is that within, like, a year? Decade? Century? So, yeah, it's little things like that. If you watch a stream, you can find out about most of that stuff. Somewhere from around the 5-hour mark-ish, I do believe, is the RuneScape 3 stuff. At the beginning is the old school RuneScape. I don't play old school RuneScape, and I expect most of you watching these videos also probably don't play old school RuneScape or focus more on RuneScape 3. Or at least that's why you come here. So there you go. There's your RuneScape 3 news plus Ars Chronicle and the new client and stuff. All in all, pretty good. If you are interested in the old school RuneScape stuff, there was quite a lot of nice information there, and it does sound pretty sweet. Although I've got absolutely no idea about what's inside old school, besides it's old school, and I don't like it all that much because it doesn't have resizable and it looks ugly. But besides that, I know nothing. But it does sound pretty cool. It seems like they've added a lot of nice stuff to old school RuneScape, and from what the devs were saying, it sounds like it's going to keep going and they're going to add even more. Massive new continent for old school RuneScape. It sounds awesome. Yeah, I won't be playing it though. But yeah, if you do play old school, I'm sure that's pretty fucking sweet. Well, I did say that was the last thing, but there's one more. And I want you just to think about this for a little bit. Just think about this. At RuneFest, they had a special little room. And in this special little room, they made a prototype of some kind. And this prototype was using the Oculus Rift. They had a working demo kind of thing with the Oculus Rift within RuneScape, kind of showcasing Privthinus. So basically you go into this room, they have an Oculus Rift, and they've made it possible for you to wear the Oculus Rift and you'd be kind of in your character. And you could look around Privthinus and you'd be looking up to like the massive crystal towers and stuff like that, and you could look around Privthinus inside the Oculus Rift. So full 3D kind of virtual reality deal. Oculus Rift, son, on RuneScape. Yeah, I'll leave you with that. The Oculus Rift on RS. Happy days. It does sound pretty sweet. I do like the Oculus Rift, it's got to be said. I don't know if any of you have actually tried it out, but it is absolutely awesome. Either way, people, I'll leave you with that. That is your summary of everything in RuneFest. Minus the old school RuneScape stuff, because, well, I don't cover it. So there we go. Either way, people, you've now been informed. So until next time, well, what we got? Yeah, Iron Man, that's coming. So that'll be sometime next week. Happy days. So until then, people, I will catch you all later. Have a good one.